guys, welcome back. Following up with what I believe is going to be the end of Star Wars week. Today is Revenge of the Sixth, and since it's got the title of Revenge in it, I thought, well, maybe it's time to get back into talking about some elements of Star Wars that I don't like. Specifically stuff in the sequel trilogy. Now, as referenced, normally this channel is as positive as I can possibly get. I get so annoyed at people that harp on the same things over and over and over again. But I'm using this as my absolute final chance to air my grievances about the Star Wars sequel trilogy, from The Force Awakens to The Rise of Skywalker. So today I'm going to be talking about what is, in my opinion, the top 5 worst things about the sequel trilogy. Starting at number 5, we have the villains. I'm sorry, but the villains in the sequel trilogy were among some of the worst in the entire Star Wars saga. Yes, I mean it. The prequels had their problems, but they had some amazing villains. They had Palpatine pulling the strings from behind the scenes. They had Darth Maul, who is arguably one of the most popular and acrobatic Star Wars villains of all time. And they had Dooku, who is another sort of behind-the-scenes thing. Grievous is the only exception to that, but we can forget about him. The majority of the villains in the prequels were amazing. The original trilogy, we had Darth Vader, the Emperor, Grand Moff Tarkin. I think it's fair to say that the villains in the original trilogy set the standard for how awesome a villain should be. Then we got the sequel trilogy villains. First of all, we have Snoke. We had no idea where the dang guy came from. He was just there to be a giant hologram and give a rumbling voice in Force Awakens. In The Last Jedi, he played sort of a rip-off Palpatine role, bragging that, they got him monologuing, "I cannot be betrayed." Seriously? Talk about arrogance being a weakness. And then come to find out, we see an entire jar of Snoke clones, so apparently he's a clone of someone or something in the past, and Palpatine just put him in there to keep pulling the strings from behind the scenes. And seriously? They had to clone Palpatine? He got cloned like half a dozen times in the Legends books, and it didn't even work then. What made them think it was going to work in a cinematic film to just keep bringing back Palpatine? Man, they must really lack some creativity if they couldn't think of anything else. Okay, first of all, we're going to have a rip-off Palpatine, and then, okay, Snoke's gone, so let's just clone Palpatine. Oh yes. After Snoke, we get Kylo. One of those memes with Adam Driver and Baby Yoda summed it up perfectly. You're an emo with a light stick. He's basically an emo brat throwing temper tantrums, smashing anything when he doesn't get his way. And he also, even his dialogue reflects his temper tantrum qualities, and especially in The Last Jedi when he goes to write, "You're still holding on, let go." Oh, I can't stand him. Oh, and speaking of annoying villains, General Hux. Hux sucks. I hate that guy. He's one of the Star Wars villains. Every time I see him, I want to strangle him. He's annoying. He's over the top. He's a snob. Apparently he committed patricide, if I remember his backstory correctly. And it turns out I'm the spy. I just want Ren to lose. What a petty weirdo. I mean, jeez. Number 4 on the list, awkward romance. Seriously, the only romance or anything resembling romance that actually worked in the sequel trilogy was that which was already established between Han and Leia. I mean, they've gone their separate ways, they sort of drifted apart, but they still love each other. And that comes out and it's done beautifully. Anything else? The romance between Finn and Rose, it felt completely one-sided. Rose was pretty much fangirling Finn from the very beginning. Finn was going to commit self-sacrifice and fly into that big old destroyer thing in an effort to stop it and buy the Resistance some extra time. She got selfish and, oh, I saved you. We don't have to fight what we hate. We can just save what we love. And most awkward kiss in history, and she passes out. I think the only reason Finn puts up with it is Finn, from what I've been able to see, has got a very protective personality. It's just part of who he is. That's why he didn't want to fire on the villagers. That's why he's super protective of Rey, like, almost instantly. So it just didn't work. And then there's the whole Reylo thing. I've said it before how many times I absolutely despise the whole idea that there could be a romance between Kylo and Rey. The fact that they're connected, the fact that they're apparently a dyad in the Force, like two parts when they come together become more powerful, that does not make it okay for them to get together romantically. Rey and Kylo's whole relationship starts off on a foundation of abuse and manipulation on Kylo's end. Also, it sort of reinforces the horrible and dangerous trope that, hey girls, you can still love a bad boy, and guess what? If you love him enough, and if you work hard enough, he will come back to you and turn good in the end. You can save him. That makes me really, really mad because a lot of girls have gotten hurt like that, trying to think they could save a bad boy. Girls, please, stay away from the bad boys. Do not use Rey and Kylo as any kind of example. There. Okay, and now I've gotten that out of the way, we can move on. Okay, felt good to get that off my chest. Number 3, killing off almost all of the legacy characters. The only ones who survived the sequel trilogy were Chewie, 3PO, R2, Lando, and Wedge. Everyone else kicked it, which breaks my heart. They even killed off Admiral Akbar. First of all, Force Awakens, Han dies because his son commits patricide. Second one, Luke dies from using the Force too hard. Don't get me wrong, I love the twin sunset. I love that he faded away and his cloak drifted off, but the fact that Luke never got off the island still bugs me, which is why I try not to think about it very often. And he went too soon. He should have stuck around until at least the third one, and then I would have been fine with Luke going in the same manner as long as it wasn't using the Force. If it was in episode 9, that would have felt okay. I was prepared for that. I was not prepared for him to go in episode 8. That was way too soon. Granted, I am a Skywalker fangirl, so yes, my opinion on that is colored. And then, in Rise of Skywalker, Leia died. There wasn't really any other way around it with the passing of Carrie Fisher, and it did feel like a nice way for us fans to sort of say goodbye in our own way. It was almost like a little funeral for us, like a memorial service almost. And that's actually, I can accept Leia's passing, given the circumstances, a lot easier than the passing of Han or Luke. But the thing that makes the loss of the legacy characters an absolute travesty, we didn't get the reunion. Han, Luke, and Leia, the very last time we see them all together is at the end of Return of the Jedi, and something just feels so wrong about that. Even the actors were saying, well, I wish we could have had a reunion, and now that's never going to happen. So, yeah, that just makes me feel incredibly sad that we never got the reunion between Han, Luke, and Leia. I wanted it so bad. Number 2, unoriginal story elements. The most obvious of this, of course, is Starkiller Base. Oh, let's see. First, you build a Death Star, that one gets destroyed. You build another Death Star, that one gets destroyed. And then Starkiller Base. Oh, okay, let's just core a planet like an apple and stick a super weapon in there, and it sucks up plasma from a star and shoots it at other systems. Now, normally I'm totally fine with science in a Star Wars movie being off because it's space fantasy and not science fiction. But this one took the suspension of disbelief and kind of threw it out the window. And also, it's been done before in the Legends books. I mean, there was the Sun Crushers, Centerpoint, a whole bunch of ridiculous super weapon of the weak things because they couldn't think of a good enough, they couldn't think of any original menaces for the heroes to have a problem and try and get rid of it. Oh no, the galaxy's gonna end, we need to take out another super weapon. Another thing the Legends did, and it never worked in the books, but they went for it anyway, the resurrection of Palpatine. Ugh. Why? Minor gripe, but still a gripe. The ending for The Apprentice. The only two apprentices who died because of their serving the dark side ended up being Count Dooku and Darth Maul. And Darth Maul was resurrected later. The rest of them got redeemed. The Skywalkers, basically, the turn of the dark side. Oh, at the last minute, they perform an act of self-sacrifice and get redeemed. Darth Vader already did this. The sacrifice of a parent for their child, honestly, I think means so much more than the sacrifice of a boy for a girl. I mean, I know some people are going to argue with me about this, and going into episode 9, I would have been totally fine with Kylo just getting killed. Because they already did the redemption arc and like, oh gosh, sometimes the bad guy doesn't always turn back to the light side. And sometimes that sadly happens. Sometimes a person is just irredeemable and they've committed themselves to the darkness and die in darkness. That does happen sometimes. But since it's Disney, I can understand why they went ahead and redeemed Ben. So that's a minor gripe, but still a gripe. Finally, the number one worst thing about the sequel trilogy, at least in my personal opinion, Luke Skywalker. They done him dirty. I mean, the poor guy gets like no respect, except a teensy-weensy little bit in episode 9, which was good, but they completely disrespected the character of Luke Skywalker. Maybe it's because everyone got spoiled with a super powerful, super patient, super awesome Luke in about 60 to 70% of the Legends books. But this Luke we get is a broken man who becomes a hermit on an island. Yes, later he admits his mistake, but this grumpy, get off my lawn old man Luke just didn't feel right. Yoda finally knocked some sense into him, and after that we got our Luke Skywalker back. But, then he used the Force too hard and died. Too soon. He never actually trained Rey. Even though it was said Rey was a student of Skywalker, Luke never actually trained her. Talk about falling down on the job. You know what? I've finally spoken my piece. I've gotten this out of my system. Now I can let it go. As I said, Yoda did come along and knock some sense into Luke. And Force Ghost Luke in episode 9 was excellent. I absolutely loved Force Ghost Luke. So there you go, guys. Those are the Clumsy Jedi's top 5 worst things about the sequel trilogy. That's all for today. Thank you for watching. If you want to see more family-friendly Star Wars content, go ahead and click that little subscription button down below, and don't forget to check out the links in the description box. Question of the day. I'm going to have to be careful with this. If you could change just one thing from any of the movies, whether it's 7, 8, or 9, if you could just change one thing about them, what would it be? Post a comment. I am only going to drop this warning once. If comments get nasty, if people start swearing or using aggressive language regarding the sequel trilogy, especially any actors or filmmakers, not only is that person going to get blocked, but the comment section in this video is going to get disabled. You can scream free speech all you want, but this is my video and I want things to stay, at the very least, civil. Alright, I've said my piece. I'm going to let it go now. So I'm going to see everybody again on Friday, and until then, God bless and may the Force be with you. You don't want to spread negativity. You want to subscribe and click notifications.